This is the Paranormal Report. Indeed it is. This is a Paranormal Report. I am Jim.
I'm Dar. Hey, what's new?
Oh, well, Father's Day was nice. Thank you.
Good.
That was nice.
Hoping you thought it was good.
Just to fill people in, you guys did something really neat. You did that kind of where you sync the food with a film. You had Pulp Fiction, and I had a tasty Big Kahuna burger, and it was tasty.
And a nice
shake.
Beverage to wash it down.
Yeah. Tasty.
The girls and I went all
tasty burger down with this beverage. Yes.
Well, we have some white disposable cups. So I made the Big Kahuna logo. I printed it up and we put it on the cup.
You got me a shirt, yeah.
We got a white lunch bag and we did the same. So we delivered you the burger and fries in the lunch bag during that part of the movie when he has
it was very
bite
cool.
of the
And
tasty burger.
Well, allow me to retort. No, no,
I thought it was fun.
throughout.
The girls did it for me for Mother's Day with Moonstruck. And because it went so well, Cassandra immediately that evening looked at me and she's like, "Dad, Pulp Fiction." I'm like, "Let's go."
Yeah, I had no idea. So
except there was a lot of junk
I was
food.
Stuffed.
Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, there wasn't any. There was not one healthy thing on the whole menu.
Not a vegetable in sight. No, there was some lettuce and tomato in the burger.
Yeah. And earlier in the day, we had a nice breakfast with my dad at a diner. We took him out to a diner, which I think he enjoyed. And a good time was had by all. So thank you, and really appreciate that. And if you're out there, I hope that you had a great day as well.
Yes.
Well, a couple people who had a memorable day. I think this just came out in the last 48 hours or something.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp have done it again. They have released some UFO footage that they say was captured by military, U.S. military. Now, this was something that they say should have been public, but it was not meant to be public. It was leaked.
Ooh.
They said it was recorded by government personnel over the Afghan-Pakistani border in November of 2020. And if you look at it, and we're not going to show it here because I've been reading, YouTube is getting really funky about you sharing any videos. They will eliminate your channel. So unfortunately, we can't show you the clip. You can look it up. We'll have a link. But
and the links in the show notes,
The way that I saw it, it looked like if you imagine like a quarter going over the night sky, like you were below, it looked like a quarter going across.
So round, very round?
Yeah, a disc. And
not
flat. Well, it was flat too. It was round. It was like a disc. It was like a disc.
Okay.
So Corbell told dailymail.com, and that's where this is from, dailymail.co.uk. This is the first time in history that the military filmed footage of a disc-shaped UAP, designated as such by the military, has been captured on camera and released to the public. It has implications that are huge. They said the object was spotted during a reconnaissance mission by a high-altitude Air Force platform. So, and it looks like a disc. So, I mean, they zoomed in. They did, one of them was AI enhanced, but it was interesting. I mean, I don't know that I'm ready to think that it's absolutely earth shattering, but I think there are 3 different videos.
Wow.
But I agree with Corbell, who says the public has a right and a need to know. And I certainly, particularly George Knapp, I respect George Knapp. He's been on this story, I think, since the 80s. Of course, he's known for his work with KLAS out in Las Vegas and Coast to Coast AM and so forth. So, it's just another kind of stone on the scale of, there is something to this UFO stuff.
Right, just add it to the list, right?
Add it to the list. So I thought that was a really interesting story that came out this week, and I say check it out and see what you think, because I think anytime we get new footage, particularly if it's coming from the U.S. military, very interesting stuff. And I still believe, and we'll get into some of that later, that the government is totally stonewalling on all this stuff.
Well, of course, more news outlets are reporting kind of what we reported last week about it just kind of being cover like cover up and hush hush. And here, we're going to give you this information.
Right.
And we're not telling you anything. So
right. Exactly. Now, you have a different story on a totally different topic, and this gets into that question of AI again.
You guys know I'm just not into AI because I just believe it's going to go down the nefarious route. It's just going to, I do think it can be used for good. I do, but I don't think that's what's going to end up happening. And I think it's going to get kind of unethical. But this was a great story. It's actually like a video, and it's from BBC, and they have a show called Tech News. Or Tech Now, and it's talking about griefbots. So it's allowing people to talk to their loved ones who have passed. And I guess they were kind of focusing on this documentary called Eternal You, and they started using these AI chatbots, and they talked to this one woman who was just really wanting to talk to her loved one. And then she said it got kind of creepy. And it was, she said the chatbot was saying stuff to her that she really didn't want to hear, posing as her loved one, mind you.
Boy.
So the problem with this is you really can't control the use of it. So I think what it does is it takes like all of your messages. So it's taking your data, right? And then it's extrapolating it into this bot. And it can be quite unpredictable and scary. Yeah. So there's a bunch of startups that are doing this. They kind of highlighted this one gentleman's startup. His is called You Only Virtual, and Justin Harrison is his name. And he's created personas, and he did this because his mom passed away, and he based this persona virtual off his mom. Huh. And it was weird. They show him calling her on his birthday, and he makes a call, and you could hear her saying, "Happy birthday, baby." So they talked to a psychologist, right? As somebody who specializes in cyber psychology, right? And, she said on one hand, it could be good for people who are, a certain type that really wants to hear from their loved one. And then on the other hand, it can be quite destructive. And there's all kinds of things you have to worry about, like deep fakes, right? If they are creating this persona, they can take data from that person. They could open bank accounts. Who knows what they can do with that, right?
Yeah.
So I have a problem with it. And, I don't know.
I guess the idea is to put in a lot of information about the person. So ostensibly the AI would reply and talk in the way
it does, supposedly.
Supposedly.
But it doesn't always.
Even if you put in, 10,000 facts about a person and how they feel about different things, that's still only scratching the surface. But it's
not even taking facts, Jim. It's taking messages, like text messages. It's taking things from like WhatsApp and your iMessages, and that's how it's creating the way the person speaks, like how they're typing it.
I'm assuming it does voice as well, like basically
the
like
Versona does
or something like that. Yeah,
that Versona one does. Which
I could see how it could be. In one way, I could see how it could be comforting, but I think that it would and again, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not playing one, but it would seem to me that it could cause somebody to disassociate from reality and kind of see that as a fake reality. And you kind of end up like Norman Bates, I mean.
Well, they did say that people that used it were, in the end, overall, were very disappointed. So I don't know what their expectations were.
Well, I mean, we talk about the singularity, the whole dream of people like that, like Ray Kurzweil and people like that is the idea, I think, I hope I'm not misstating, but is that you could take the contents of a person's mind and download it so even their physical body dies, then they would live on. I think that's kind of the ultimate goal, but I don't think that's possible. You might get a facsimile, but I don't think you're going to get the real person. Because I believe in such a thing as a soul. And again, there's so many different thoughts and opinions. I know my opinions change from day to day. So if you even got a snapshot of me now in everything I think, feel, and believe, a year from now, there might be a considerable amount of that that's different. Of
course.
Because we evolve as people, right?
We evolve, we change, hopefully for the better. We gain knowledge, experience, wisdom. I mean, just think of all the experiences that you go through that change you, right? The bot's not going to change. I mean, you're not hearing from them after something would happen. I don't know. To me, it's just scary because that data is then out there, and that data is going to live long after we're gone from this earth. So,
yeah, frightening stuff.
And then nefarious hands. I don't know. I mean, be morbid, whatever. I have a voicemail that my dad left me, and I kept it on my phone. I haven't listened to it since he passed because I can't. But I mean, I have it. But I wouldn't want to talk to him. I know it's not him. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's not his being.
Right.
It's not.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, that would not bring me comfort. It would just be like pain.
And
I'm hearing his voice without meaning.
In some ways, he talks to you because in the sense that you know what he would say. We both say.
Oh, my God. We joke around so much.
Spend.
Save a damn penny. Damn. Okay.
My God. You see. All right. Well, we see there was a big gathering from June 6th to June 8th. The Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies held its annual conference in Huntsville, Alabama. Now, this is from sentinelnews.substack.com, and it was very interesting. I'll just talk about a couple of these. Now, of course, Huntsville is known for, it's a NASA center there. They also have a lot of military there. So it really is, I guess it's, some people call it Rocket City, not to mention private contractors. So this seems like a perfect place. Now, this seems like the most interesting presentation to me. John Stratton, who was the former director of the Unidentified Area Phenomena Task Force, UAPTF, which was one of the predecessors of AARO. And he was active, or it was active. Yes, the UAPTF was active between August 2020 and November 2021. So I think, if I'm thinking correctly, that would straddle a couple of different administrations, right? That would have been the transition from Trump 1 to Biden. So basically, he said as they were doing his work, he managed to retrieve data proving the existence of these aircraft, talking about these advanced craft that nobody understands. He says, more worryingly, analysis of this data seems to indicate a preference for secret military sites, which maps to what we hear over the years, UFOs being attracted to secret military sites. He said that he became aware of another older and much larger group gathering the same information, but they did not want to cooperate. He said that, and this goes very much with what we've seen with the drones at places like Langley and things. He stated that there were frequent interactions taking place along the East Coast. This is back in 20 and 21, by the way. These objects were observed by military personnel as well as imaging systems and multi-band radars. And he said even though that these craft or whatever they are defy our understanding of physics or engineering, his team understands the physical laws governing their technologies. Now, I would like to know what those are, if he could have expanded on those a little bit, but I'm guessing he didn't. He said he tried to pass it up the chain of command, basically got stonewalled by the administration. I don't know if that was Trump 1 or Biden.
Or both.
And that the UAPTF was eventually disbanded. So I'm wondering if, they were getting a little too close. They're like, oh, we'll come out with this new thing, AARO, So again, some other ones, Dr. Kevin Knuth, if that's the correct.
Or Knuth, yeah. This is the one I thought was kind of interesting. I thought was interesting about underwater.
Yeah.
Did you see what he was saying about that?
Well, yeah, he said that advanced platforms have been detected in the ocean since the 19th century. And he concluded his presentation by talking how green balls of light have been observed near strategic installations in the U.S. between 1948 and 1951 by serious scientists and astronomers and so forth. He also talked about Roswell, the whole idea of the mogul explanation that came out in the 90s. He thinks that's so much BS, it doesn't fit what happened. I mean, let's face it. I think our government's covering up a lot, and I think they continue to cover up a lot. This goes on and talks about all the different people. There was Dr. Laura Domine, who works with Dr. Avi Loeb, who has been on our shows, that Galileo project at Harvard University. But I checked this out. This would have been a really neat thing to be at.
Yeah,
and it's a little bit
so.
different maybe than the average UFO conference. These are, a lot of hardcore scientists here. So good on them for doing the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. Sounds like a group worth checking out.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's from the science perspective, and we always talk about that. So, and it had such a number of esteemed, scientists and guests there. It would have been, but did you hear about any of this in the mainstream media?
No, we're too busy.
I mean, it wasn't on any of the main. This story was not. No. I mean, look at it. It's buried in the Sentinel News. Come on.
No, they don't want
and this is a big thing. Yeah.
They don't want anything that makes it look serious.
No.
So, well, then the next story is serious, and I believe in these sorts of things, and I think you do too. Tell us about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so this was from Daily Mail, and it's about a man named Andy Thomas, and when he was 12, back in 1977, he had a premonition that his grandfather died, and he actually saw his mom coming down the walk crying, and he knew, my granddad's dead. And he started to kind of process it. And then without warning, he woke up in his bed. And then he's like, oh, thank God it was just a bad dream. But then it was very short-lived because he did look out the window and there's his mom walking towards the house in tears. And he was in disbelief because his premonition came completely true. And it was he said, this is what made it so weird. It was long lasting and nothing because people will say, oh, it's deja vu. He said, no, because everything was precise, absolutely precise. And it kept going on for more than a few seconds and more a minute. He knew it wasn't normal because he said he watched everything unfold. He knew exactly where people were going to stand, what they were going to say, who was going to do what. Who was going to walk across the room. He knew all of it. Exactly. And he just knew what was going to unfold. And he said, boy, this was just kind of weird. And he tried to tell the family and nobody wanted to listen to him. But he said that changed him throughout his life. And this is the quote I really liked. He says, this stuff gets rubbished and you're always told that it's a hallucination. But I've experienced enough myself to know that I have to be open-minded about it. So he's now a paranormal researcher. He's an author, and he goes across country looking for similar experiences. And he's heard many similar experiences to his. And this is the other part I liked about this story because he says he's a staunch believer in the supernatural. Mm-hmm. He still believes though that a scientific explanation is possible. Mm-hmm. Right? He said on one level there's no such thing as the paranormal. It's just something that science hasn't explained yet.
Yes.
Right.
Well, you don't know this because we didn't talk about this story beforehand, but I've interviewed Andy before.
Oh, have you really?
Actually, he was on episode 4 of the Paranormal Podcast. Back in 2005.
Gosh.
And I think I've interviewed him more than once. I think we talked about crop circles and some different things. I think he's been on the shows a couple different times. Should have him back. It's been a little while.
Yes, you should.
But,
you should.
But when you said that, I'm like, is it that Andy Thomas? And it's like,
yes.
It's that Andy Thomas.
Yeah.
So again, we hear on the campfire all the time these time slips where people see things and then it seems like they come back. There's we just had on the Paranormal Podcast, Dr. Kate Sherrill. We talked about there's a place in Liverpool where people have reported, and it's probably been over the last 10, 20 years this has happened. This one particular area in Liverpool, people will report like the street will change into like the 50s or 60s, and they can walk into a shop and interact in the 50s and 60s, and then they walk out and it just turns back to the present day. And there's more than one report of this. The time slip thing is really interesting to me because I really believe there's something to it. So maybe it wasn't as much as of a premonition as he actually moved forward in time. You know what I'm saying?
Well, he says that he thinks like his premonitions can be explained by quantum physics. And he talks about, precognition and, the pulse of light, negative time, all of that. So he does think that's involved. So
yeah,
it'd be great to have him back on. We'll have to reach out to him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, there's something strange going on in Antarctica. Now, for those of you who are conspiracy-minded, you'll know that many, many years ago, there was something called Operation High Jump, right after the Second World War, that involved Admiral Byrd going down and basically doing an expedition at the Antarctica area. And a lot of people think he found a lot of strange things because there was a lot of hush-hushness around it. Well, I don't know if that's true or not, but when I saw this story, and this is from Real Scientist, it's phys.org, not F-I-Z-Z, P-H-Y-S.
Like physics.
Yes. Strange radio pulses detected coming from ice in Antarctica. And what is weird about this, it's not coming from above the ground. It's not coming it's coming from underneath, far underneath. And these are scientists reporting this, saying, we don't know what's going on here. Here's a little bit from the article. A cosmic particle detector in Antarctica has detected a series of bizarre signals that defy the current understanding of particle physics, according to an international research group that includes scientists from Penn State. The unusual radio pulses were detected by the Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna Experiment, and it's a range of instruments flown on balloons high above Antarctica. So here's what Stephanie Whistle said. The radio waves that we detected were at really steep angles, like 30 degrees below the surface of the ice. It's an interesting problem because we still don't actually have an explanation for what those anomalies are. But what we do know is that they're most likely not representing neutrinos. And we know all about neutrinos because our former professor in the class where we met was a neutrino researcher.
Oh, big on neutrinos.
Cleveland. When he said that, I was saying, I don't like neutrinos on my pizza. But down in the Cleveland salt mines, I know they used to, and I'm guessing they still do because it's underground and somehow it filters out and they can measure neutrinos and do fancy stuff with neutrinos down there. But it doesn't make a lot of sense that it's coming from underneath the ice. They basically said it should not be able to penetrate it. They shouldn't be able to hear it and detect it, but they can.
I mean,
and they don't know why.
Yeah, if you know how sound waves work.
So I guess the point is there something down there? I immediately thought of the Admiral Byrd thing because people said that he had discovered that there was a hollow earth. There's kind of crazy theories about Nazis under the earth. And I mean, it really gets but the conspiracies get kind of weird. But something was weird about that trip. Operation High Jump, if you want to look it up. But just very, very weird kind of stuff. And now we're seeing scientists saying, well, at least this is weird and we can't explain it. So are there, we always talk about all the ETs and things coming from out there. What if they're coming from down below? Maybe they've got a base at Antarctica.
Or both.
I mean, I don't think that's high on the probability, but.
Oh, we don't know what's under there, right?
We don't know.
Or maybe something, crashed or survived years and years ago and then was covered up, or who knows?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Just my stupid theory.
Well, there you go.
And speaking of, no. There's a story. So those of you from the UK, you have a new reform chairman. He is the former Most Haunted Live. So that was a show in the UK. and he's got a role in Nigel Farage's party. And
so
he admitted
now the Reform Party, if I remember correct, you've got the conservatives, and probably right of the conservatives are the Reform Party, if I'm correct.
So what, like uber conservative?
They're more conservative than the conservatives.
Okay.
Yes, more right than the conservatives.
All right. Well, I don't know. He was on Good Morning. His name's David Bull. He was on Good Morning Great Britain or Good Morning Britain. And he left the host speechless because he admitted he believed in ghosts. And one time he was once strangled by psychic Derek Acora because his dead grandmother was with him.
Huh.
So they're having this conversation with him, and because he was on that show, right? Most Haunted Live. They said, "Well, the host asked, do you believe in ghosts?" And he said, I do, and I'll tell you why. And he just went into this whole thing about how he was at a bar, and Derek Acora, who's a paranormal medium at the time, came up to him and said, "You didn't come here on your own, did you?" And he said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Your grandmother's with you."
Oh.
So, yeah. So he's like, "Oh, okay." And then he said Derek changed facially, and he started to channel her. And then he jumped on him and tried to strangle him.
Oh, my Lord. Well,
and then he says, I'm not kidding. I had bouncers. They pulled him off me. I went to bed the next day. I said, "Would you like to explain why you tried to kill me?" And he said, "Well, I was talking to your grandmother. It was then hijacked by another evil spirit." So there you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, the thing I will say is this, though, seriously, is
okay.
Now, I'm not commenting on his politics one way or the other.
I'm not either. I'm not talking about that.
But I am saying, what's wrong with a political leader having a belief in ghosts?
Oh, because it's rubbish, remember?
I can see how, like, if I were running, first of all, I couldn't run for anything because all the things I've talked about. First of all, I wouldn't because the political system is a mess. But if I were going to, I couldn't because I'd be labeled, a kook because of all the different things I've talked about. But why should that be? Why do we have to limit ourselves to, not exploring this side of life? And if we do, why is it looked down upon?
Well, even now, Jim, when you go out somewhere and we talk to somebody, a stranger or whatever, like, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And you say, "Oh, I'm a podcaster." "Oh, what do you podcast on?" "The paranormal." And then it starts. You get that facial expression like, "Oh,
that's interesting.
That's interesting.
Well, my favorite story about that is when I went for jury duty. I went to jury duty twice. The first time I worked for a radio station, I said, I work for a classical radio station, blah, 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 da, 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 right on the jury right away. The second time, I was doing this full time by that time, and I knew that there was the bias, so I was very honest. But I made sure I was very inclusive in my answer. "Sir, what do you do for a living?" "Well, I podcast on the paranormal, things like Bigfoot, UFOs, cryptid creatures, ghosts." That's right. "Juror 13, you are dismissed."
Bye-bye.
Well, I was honest, but I knew when I said that, they're going to we got to let go.
But that's what's out there. That's what's out there.
Let it work.
And even now, like, for me, if I say, "Oh, I'm a speech language pathologist." Oh, I'm an editor on paranormal podcasts." "Oh, what is that?" Yeah. "Really? Do you believe in that stuff?"
Yeah. So it's the way it is.
So the bias is there. So I applaud him I applaud him for getting on there and coming forward and telling what he believes. So
absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
Before we get to the next story, very important, we got to talk a little bit about our merch.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So you have your Spooky Mama shirt on, right?
I'm a Spooky Mama.
Then
I love this shirt.
I love to listen to ghost stories around the campfire, and I don't want to pull my shirt up and
why not?
But you can see the ghosts dancing around the fire there. And it's all at jimharold.com/merch, jimharold.com/merch. There's the bumper magnet. That is not a sticker. That is a magnet.
It's a magnet. I package it like this. I mean, you could put on your bumper, but I was concerned that maybe people didn't want to put that on their car. You can put it elsewhere. You put it on your laptop, your refrigerator.
I personally put it on my rear bumper. That is. But
does it stick?
It's a little uncomfortable.
Come here, let's find
here.
Come here, let's find out.
JimHarold.com/merch. JimHarold.com/merch. And we got the
coloring book.
I don't think anybody knows I have a coloring book.
There are some people have purchased this. This is a really cool.
Lem Peralta was the artist on this. He did it. These are actually from stories of the campfire.
Wrong thing.
Show a couple more there.
Yeah, so they're stories, and what's nice is there's an index in the back, which I will get to here.
Now it's also available
it tells you.
Go ahead.
What story, where it came from.
It's like a key. Yeah,
it's like a key. So they got the lava lamp, one of my favorites.
Yeah, I forget which one that was. Ooh, one of the Ouija board stories. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's
some really cool.
Yeah.
If you like coloring, or if you just want to kind of, you know what would be great? Put on Jim's campfire, grab the coloring book,
and start coloring.
Relieve stress and start coloring.
And I also autograph. That's the difference. You can get that at Amazon, but you won't get the autographed edition.
Personalization.
If you order through
we have to give a shout out to Alan.
Oh, that was so funny.
Alan just ordered one of Jim's books, one of the campfire books. I think it was book 3. And he requested the absolute best personalization thus far. Jim? He
basically had me say the Kansas City Royals and the Chiefs were my favorite teams. And that, I'm a big fan of Patrick Mahomes, although I do respect him very much. He's a great player. But the point is that obviously I'm a Cleveland fan, if you can see up there, all our sports teams. So I did write the inscription as he wrote, and then I put a sticky note on and said, of course, this is all a lie. Now, I won't write anything, but I'll write most things.
There's
some, I've got some
keep it
lines
PG.
I won't cross.
Right. But I think those are fun when they come across with a fun personalization like that. So that is the difference.
One more thing before we go on to the next story. We are working on something people have specifically asked for in the Facebook group. Specifically said, if you had that, I would buy it in a minute. Well, it's
coming tomorrow. Hopefully it's good enough to sell.
Yeah, we got it. Yeah, but
I maybe should have ordered a sample first.
Yeah. Well, we should have that. Hopefully, if all looks good, we'll have that up next week and you'll know about it.
Yeah.
And one quick note, another thing we're working on, I had been talking about a new community. We have our Facebook virtual campfire group, but Facebook can get very frustrating.
So cool.
27,000 people. We put something up, 1,500 people see it if we're lucky. And I know a lot of people have complained of that not seeing things because Facebook is basically censoring us because we're not paying them to show our stuff. So we're creating a free community. It's from a very well-known platform. It doesn't cost you a penny. I pay for it. And it's really neat. I think you'll agree, Dar. I think you were pretty impressed.
It is really cool. You will finally see me on social media.
Yeah, that's the nice thing. You're going to be interacting because you don't like Facebook and X and all that stuff. But this will be just for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's talking about what interests us in the paranormal. It's going to have different sections that you can visit for different shows. And we're going to discuss whatever you want to discuss related to the paranormal. It's our own little community.
And if everything goes well, hopefully next week we'll start inviting some preliminary people in to test it. And
Jim has really been, he has been working really hard. I think you worked all day Saturday almost on this.
And a big part of last week.
Evenings. Yeah. Because,
it's important. It's important.
Well, it is important. We want a safe space for everybody to be able to gather and be able to talk about things and have other people see it and be able to comment on it. I like it because it's not like Facebook, which is just a complete brag fest and everybody, oh, look at my kids and look at this. I don't want to look at that. I want to, I want to see what Jim has posted and I can't.
Right. Although I got to say on Instagram, those are our most popular posts when I post pictures of you or the kids or somewhere we go. Way more popular than when I post about the shows. But this will be dedicated to our show discussion and so forth. It should be a lot of fun. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, stay tuned.
And that's something that is totally free, not connected to our Plus Club. Won't cost you a penny. And just stay tuned. We'll have more info soon on it.
Yeah,
all right.
It's fun.
Well, you know, today almost every other story, and I've got to find it here because it's on a little different service here. But almost every other story is somebody I've interviewed or they're mentioned in the article. And this is about something called panspermia. And before anybody goes, oh, he said, no, this is the idea. The idea that life on Earth began elsewhere among the stars has long been controversial, but new results have brought it back into the limelight. And the idea is basically that rather than kind of coming from the primordial ooze, that it came from somewhere out here, and that's how, life started in evolution. And I particularly thought it was interesting. One of the original architects of this was Professor Chandra Wickramasinghe, who I interviewed a few years ago.
Oh my
so it's
gosh.
like every other story we're doing today is like, I interviewed him, I interviewed her, I interviewed him.
Pretty cool.
So, but they said that here they said the idea is gaining traction thanks to a pair of missions, NASA's OSIRIS-REx and Japan's Hayabusa 2, that in the past few years have returned rocks from asteroids back to Earth. Analysis of those samples suggests that some of the building blocks of life are present in the asteroids, raising the prospect that those same building blocks and perhaps even life itself could have been delivered to Earth. And some people believe that maybe from Mars, before Mars became what it is now, maybe it was teeming with life and came from there. Maybe it came from another solar system. But again, showing what little we know and showing that, things that were maybe poo-pooed 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, now people are saying, oh, we need to take a second look. And in this article, I'm not going to go into all of it, but Dr. Jason Dworkin, project scientist on the OSIRIS-REx mission at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland, so it's not Fred's House of Rockets. He says it's absolutely plausible. Early Earth had a bombardment of material. And Professor Paul Davies said when the idea was first proposed decades ago, that everybody laughed and said, now we can look back and say they contained a germ of truth. They weren't totally crazy. And he is a theoretical physicist and astrobiologist at Arizona State University. So,
okay,
it's good. One thing I'll say, I've been seeing this a little bit more in science, I think, and maybe a little bit more saying, oh, maybe we were wrong about that. Maybe we need to take a second look at that. Do you feel that way? It feels like maybe science is opening up just slightly.
I have a hard time with all of that because, as many of you know, I don't hide it. I believe in God.
But maybe God did it.
Well, yes, God did do it.
Who's to say?
Well, he did.
Who's to say that the zap wasn't from God? Okay,
right.
Well, I do too. But the point is within that context, maybe that's the mechanism God used.
Maybe that's what he used. You think he's going to tell us? I don't know.
Well, no,
I don't know. No, it is, I'm all about research. Find those answers, try to find the answers to things. I also have that other side where if God doesn't want you to know, you're not going to find out about that. But I mean, he maybe just gives little nuggets here and there. I don't know, but no, hey, go for it. Get the research and find out. I like that they are exploring different theories now, and it's not just, one, Big Bang or whatever, you know what I mean? They're exploring different ways and they're trying to find different, means that life existed a certain way or, I don't know. Interesting to me.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
You have a story coming up, and it actually, We're not getting political, but it does involve politics.
It does, and I'm not talking about the politics of the story. You can fall on either side. I don't care. It's irrelevant because the reason why I'm bringing this story is because it's about Uri Geller.
A former guest on the Paranormal Podcast again.
See, maybe I had some kind of psychic abilities when I was looking at stories this week. I don't know.
Well, I think
I just chose ones.
You kind of went through all my podcasts last year when you uploaded them. So I think you knew I interviewed Uri Geller.
Well, that I knew. Yeah. Sometimes you have a guest I didn't know. I didn't know about Andy Thomas because that was very early on and I was knee deep in little children. But yeah. So anyway, this article is saying that Uri Geller said he used his psychic powers to break the navigation tools on Greta Thunberg's Gaza flotilla ship and said he'd stop her if she continued on. I'm not going to say where she was going, what was going on. And the reason why I'm just including this is because I thought it was very interesting that he is taking credit for why the navigation systems failed. And he said he did all of this through remote viewing. Okay. So he said he used remote viewing in the past. He said he used it to stop the clock on Big Ben in London twice. He used it to interfere with Iran missile and drone attack on Israel in 2024. So he's saying he's used it before and he will use it again. And he's taking full credit for why the flotilla stopped, being able to navigate.
Yeah. Well, the thing for me is that I actually do believe in the concept of remote viewing. I mean, just recently I saw an interview that Hal Puthoff did with Joe Rogan and that was one of the subjects that came up was remote viewing. And I've interviewed people like Lynn Buchanan and the one gentleman, he's slipping my mind, is one of the original Russell Targ, one of the original remote viewers and he's quite elderly now, but I interviewed him maybe a year ago. And the U.S. government had programs with remote viewing and reportedly had pretty decent success. And they said they stopped work on it, but do you think if they're continuing work on that they're telling us, do you think that?
Well, no, because they don't tell us half the other things that are going on.
It's kind of understandable. It's national security. They want to make, there was the movie The Men at Stare at Goats, and they try to make fun of it, Project Stargate. But the thing is that, I think there was a there. The government put real money into it. Now, in terms of whether Uri Geller, who I've interviewed and enjoyed our interview, whether he was able to stop a flotilla with his mind, that's a little bit different to me.
He said,
than remote viewing. Remote viewing is you give a target, say in the Cold War, a Soviet missile facility, and they give you details on it. That's different than actually stopping something. So,
well, he's saying his mind is so powerful, and he said that the CIA, presented his paranormal abilities in a convincing and unambiguous manner while they studied them in the 70s. And he compares remote viewing to drone piloting, noting that it just requires being in a dark room, often with a computer and a joystick. But in his case, he said he does not need a joystick. His joystick is his mind, and he can navigate his mind into whatever he wants to.
Also, look up Uri Geller and Johnny Carson. I'm not saying do it right now, but
no,
there was a really interesting appearance that he had in the 70s that did not go so well for him with Johnny Carson.
Wasn't that with like bending a spoon or something?
Yeah, with bending spoons.
Oh, I did remember that.
Yeah. So, I'm not discounting all of Uri Geller's talents.
I'm not either.
I think it's very possible that he has some abilities, but I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Now, he may think
I don't know.
I
just thought it was, like who's taking credit for that?
Maybe he fully believes that he stopped this flotilla.
Yeah,
and maybe he did. Maybe he did.
I don't know. There's there's some there's some other little organization that says they're taking credit for that. So,
Well, there you have it. There you have it. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. We're not getting political with that.
We're not. The big question is Bigfoot hiding in Florida's jungles? This is from Popular Mechanics. They did this really long story about about the Mid-Florida Bigfoot research team, and particularly the one lady here. What is her name? Marie Dumont. Actually, she'd be a great guest on the shows. And she's talking about different things that she's done here. And they've also done some work with BFRO, the Bigfoot Researchers Organization, with Matt Moneymaker. Another guy would be great to get on the show.
We've been talking about that a lot lately, yeah.
Yeah. So she said in February of 2024, during a field trip here with her team, she came across a quarter-mile stretch of 16-inch long, 5.5-inch wide bare footprints, as if some poor sneakerless NBA player had gotten lost on his way back to the beach. But the stranger's bit came hours later when she heard something large and bipedal stomp around her Subaru Crosstrek as she lay inside, and then felt something shove her car hard enough to jostle her petite frame. And they go on and they went on a search and they talked about it. And, this reporter Andrew Lawrence was pretty open-minded and said, I'm kind of agnostic. I'm not ready to say that it doesn't exist. But you wouldn't think about Florida being a place for this. But Matt Moneymaker, who they interviewed for this article, I think they interview him for all the articles, which makes sense. He's the man. He said, when you're in certain parts of Florida, it's like you've got bears and pine forest. It's almost like a piece of the Pacific Northwest. Basically, if you've got a lot of water and a lot of deer, we know that's a place where Bigfoot sightings will tend to happen. And here's something that people don't realize. I didn't realize. Moneymaker says Florida is ideal for Bigfoot because they have a 18 million acre, get that, 18 million acre wildlife corridor that covers the entire state, connecting state parks with national forests, wildlife management zones, and other areas that are virtually inaccessible to humans. And the article says
easy to get around from one place to another.
A lot of potential
if you're Bigfoot.
Food cover and wandering room, to your point, for a big reclusive animal trying to keep a low profile. So it goes on and talks about this expedition. I don't know if they had a lot of luck, but it was a nicely done article, I thought, about Bigfoot. And it didn't just, I think the guy's a little more on the skeptical side, but I thought it was relatively fair.
Did Marie said her Subaru was shaken, like moved. Did she get to see what did it?
I don't think she saw what did it. No, but she thought.
I was just wondering because was it a bear? But
one thing I learned from the article,
are there bears in Florida?
Well, sure. I would think there would be bears. Some, but I found the plural of Bigfoot because I always just referred to as Bigfoot, like you would.
Well, it's not big feet, is it?
They said. Well, I joke sometimes and said the big feet, but Bigfoots. They call them Bigfoots.
The Bigfoots.
Yeah,
I like that.
That just sounds.
I like that. Oh, that sounds like Dick Goddard, and he'd call the dogs the Fourfoots.
Yeah. Well, for those who don't know, if you're not in Cleveland, you won't know. But we had the country's best weatherman. He was here from like the early '60s up until 5-10 years ago. He was. Yeah. He was he was so popular that behind the scenes, the channel he was with, Channel 8 WJW, they called him the franchise because he basically drove their news ratings for like 50 years. But he was,
and
great.
He was such an advocate for animals.
Yes,
and there is just passed a few years ago called Goddard's Law, in Ohio, and it's for people, for animal abuse and neglect. So.
And he would call your pets the Fourfoots.
The Fourfoots.
Make sure you bring the Fourfoots in tonight. It's going to be a blustery night tonight.
He had a great manner of speaking, great voice. Just a
prevailing northwesterly winds.
Nice,
he was fantastic.
Absolutely. Home of the whatever bees or whatever the local high school's football team would be. He would say it's going to be very cold tonight in the home of the Wildcats. It was just
that nor'easter coming in. No, he was
very
great.
nice.
I mean,
nice
people from Cleveland
guy.
will know exactly what I'm talking about. We've been,
and he just a nice guy.
In Cleveland, we've been very blessed to have a lot of great broadcasters over there.
Absolutely.
Mr. Goddard passed away, unfortunately, a few years back, but Jim Donovan, a great sports anchor who's also passed. Just really, and you know, watching those people all the time, I hope I picked up a thing or two, you know, because I look at them.
You did.
I'm looking at them, and then people like nationally, like I always talk about Bob Barker. You know, I feel that like you pick up little things, and all the radio people I was so privileged to work around. So I've been stealing off of everybody.
Stealing, borrowing.
They inspired me.
What do they say? You take it and you make it your own.
A lot of people have said, your show's inspired me, and they do like a duplicate of my show. And it's like, I see how that works. But anyway.
Yeah, well, you didn't do a duplicate of anyone's show. You did your own show.
No, I didn't.
I know.
But I mean, but I was inspired by Art Bell. I mean, everybody that does this.
Everyone was.
Yeah. So, I mean, everybody borrows from
He's the
someone.
OG. He's the Godfather.
The OG. Yep. Yeah. That's true.
You're a close second.
Speaking of an OG, we go back to a psychic. There were psychics before him, but
I was just...
in the 90s,
fascinated.
Man, he was the man. He was the man.
John Edward. Oh my gosh. I watched his show.
I remember you loved that show. And this is way before I was podcasting.
Yeah, you were like, oh, why are you watching that again? I love it.
And I had mixed feelings because part of me loved it and part of me like, I don't know. But
I think you were way more skeptical than I was. I was like full on believing almost for the most part.
I think I've become more of a believer over the years, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah, I think you have actually. It's probably because I had a few psychic readings before we were going out, and they like kind of stuck with me. Somebody had read an astrology chart and had just a psychic reading, and some of the things they said were just spot on, and there was no way they could know. So, but anyway, John Edward is in Australia. He's doing a number of live medium events. Actually, he was here in Cleveland, I think, like a month ago. But we had another engagement. We couldn't go because that would have been kind of cool. Yeah. Yeah. So he was being interviewed in Australia. I think it was something called The Project, and the hosts were ticked off because one of the hosts, Sam Taunton, said, "Are you feeling anything from anyone at the desk right now?" So they wanted like a live reading, and he said, Not at the moment. And one of the other hosts were like, well, I could have done that. And they started mocking him and laughing at him. And he then explained why. He said, I'll tell you why he wasn't going to do that. He said, if I read for a host of a show and I get something private, this is not taped. It's live. And it's not something that someone wants to discuss publicly. You're going to say no. So he said he's had bad experiences. He said on radio many years ago, he was reading for a Christian conservative host of a radio show. And he said, I have legacy in the marketplace. My audience knows everything about me. And I said, okay. He was being very difficult. So in the commercial break, I said, does your audience know you decided not to have a fifth child and terminate the pregnancy? Whoa. He was like, no. If I would have said that on air, what would you have said? So he said, I would have lied because my mother-in-law listens to the show. So John's like, I don't do live readings, on air anymore, not with hosts and stuff, he's just not doing it. So they kind of, I think they kind of backed off a little bit. And, and he kind of just went on to explain, look, I didn't ask to be like a famous psychic. I didn't, he's like, you don't really know me and you can't like define me like that. And he welcomed skepticism. He said, it's important as long as we can have a conversation about it. Right. He said, I just never thought I was going to be a world famous medium. And he never really wanted to be on TV. He said it was like a byproduct of his work. And I don't blame him. Take advantage of it if you're given if you're given
I'd like
that opportunity.
To interview him. I think I reached out to his team a couple times, haven't had much luck, but you never know.
You got to circle back around.
And the other thing is that a lot of times when you can get somebody on the air is when they've got something to promote.
Well, he's doing live shows, but I don't know if he's done with his U.S. shows. We should have gotten him. See, that would have been cool had we not had another thing going on. We could have gone to the Cleveland show and could have done a
live interview.
Live.
Yes,
well, not live because he wouldn't have read you. No.
Right. Exactly. Tape though. And that's one advantage of doing, when we do our shows taped, I mean, very little do we hold back on the shows. But it is advantage. I mean, that is when something goes out, I know when we do live streams, I'm like, oh my God, I hope nothing goes horribly wrong. Because once even if you take it down, somebody else can capture it.
I hope Dar doesn't say something.
Or me.
Well, you don't say too much. I have diarrhea of the mouth. Blah, 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 blah. Right.
There you go. Jim's up.
No.
Son of a.
Anyway. Wrong. Anyway.
Well, thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate it very much. We hope that you will check out the merch, jimharold.com/merch. Also, don't forget that Plus Club. We're still in need of more members. We're way short of where we were on members last year. We're short of where we were on members last year because we made that technical change. Advertising rates are still down. Everything we've said before is still true. So please join our Plus Club to help us out at jimharold.com/plus. And we'll be back next week with more stories, right?
Absolutely. Stay tuned. And as always, stay
safe and stay spooky. We thank you for joining us today on the Paranormal Report.
Bye-bye. Have a great week.